So I just got an update on my stage 4 cancer, my stage 4 breast cancer, and this month it's spread into numerous vertebrae, new vertebrae, including one in my cervical spine, which is your neck. It's spread into my pelvis more, it's spread into my iliac bone more, it's spread into my leg bones, like the tops of my leg bones. And it's really frustrating. There's like nothing I can do for it. I try medications and then I get these scans and it's just spread further and further. Like, obviously I'm gonna die from it. Who knows how soon? But it's just really frustrating, like having this disease during this pandemic and sort of comparing our reaction to COVID-19. And I'm not saying whether that reaction is right or wrong or whether I agree or disagree with it, just comparing that reaction to how we react to young women getting breast cancer. So, with COVID-19, obviously everyone knows like that's a contagious disease, and I think that does make people really fearful. But there's kind of this attitude that we don't want anyone dying from that disease, and we're willing to do what it takes to shut that disease down and make sure that we don't have people dying from it as much as possible. So we have, hospitals, you can't have a guest there anymore. We have all the masks that people are wearing. We have businesses shut down. We've had businesses closed permanently. People lose their livelihoods. People lose their jobs. School's been kind of on hold for the whole time. And then we have the swabs, the testing swabs. And you've got people who've done like 10 tests over like the last year or more. And you have people doing that all the time. We've had it done for the whole year, and those tests aren't cheap. So we've done all of these things against COVID-19, which I understand is contagious, so it is different. But if we're saying that it's not acceptable for anyone to unnecessarily die from that disease, then how is it acceptable for anyone to die, unnecessarily from this disease? And with breast cancer, obviously we can screen. It's not a cure, but catching it early does give people a better chance to survive. We have millions of breast cancer survivors in Canada and the US. And many of them go on to live long lives. And, that's usually when we caught it early. The earlier we catch it, the better your chance of survival is. So in Canada, the screening age is 50. That's when we start screening for breast cancer. And screening includes doing mammograms, and also other tests. If you have dense breasts, you might get an MRI, you might get an ultrasound, stuff like that. But we don't start that until people are 50 years old. And we have tons of people who get breast cancer before they turn 50. Actually, 25% of diagnoses is before people turn 50. And those people who aren't getting those screenings, their cancer usually progresses a lot further. You probably wouldn't even be able to feel a breast tumor until you were at least stage 2 or 3 or even 4. So we're catching these cases of cancer in younger people much later. And then as a younger person, when you go to your doctor, you might just be you're not told that this happens in young people. You're just kind of brushed off a lot of the time because there's no one out there spreading the information that yes, breast cancer does happen to women in their 30s. It does happen to women in their 20s. And then on top of that, we actually have, it's called the Task Force for Preventive Healthcare Canada. And this task force makes guidelines that doctors are supposed to follow. So, well, not supposed to follow, but that doctors do follow. So we've got these guidelines out there saying that the task force doesn't recommend mammograms for women under the age of 50. Screening mammograms. It doesn't recommend clinical breast exams. So that means it doesn't recommend that your doctor feels your breasts every year at a physical or something like that, or talks about your risk factors. So basically nothing. If you're a woman in your 30s or 20s, there's nothing being done to try and detect your breast cancer early. The healthcare system is doing nothing to try and detect your breast cancer early. And why would that be? Why would we not be trying to detect it early and have some of these people, get their breast cancer caught at an earlier time and have some of their lives saved? Not all of their lives would be saved. It doesn't cure breast cancer to catch it early, but we know that some of their lives would be saved. So we'd probably be saving, in just the age group of the 40s, we'd be saving probably 400 lives a year if we were to do scans. And that doesn't even include people in my age group. So like, what are the reasons for not doing these screenings and not finding things early? So one of the reasons that the task force puts forward is a transient anxiety. It might cause you anxiety if your breast cancer, or if you found a lump in your breast and you went and got it checked out. You'd have some transient anxiety until you found out that it was a false positive and the lump was caused by something else, and then your anxiety would go away. So instead of having that transient anxiety, we've decided to just not test at all. Instead of having that anxiety, we'll have a few hundred people die a year from it. And then the other thing they say, and they don't state it explicitly, but it's obviously the cost. So, I mean, we could afford the cost, all the costs of COVID-19 to stop people from dying from it, but we've decided that those costs are just too much for younger women to catch their breast cancer early. And this attitude that's being put out there by the task force that we shouldn't have clinical breast exams done by doctors, I mean, it makes doctors think, oh no, I shouldn't do that because it doesn't help catch breast cancer early. And it's the wrong attitude to have. Because like as a 30-year-old with no, I guess I was 34, with no awareness that younger women could get breast cancer, I just wasn't really worried about it. And then to have to like find my breast lump myself, detect that it's breast cancer, even at a time when my breasts are like changing. So with my breast lump, you know, my breasts changed during pregnancy, they got bigger. And so I thought the lump had gone away. So I was just like, oh, it's gone. It's resolved itself. And as a younger woman, I had no idea that I was at risk for breast cancer. So I didn't worry about it too much. And then, you know, when I did show it to doctors, I showed it to my OBGYN, you know, that's a women's health specialist. And I showed it to her resident who didn't pass it on to my OBGYN. And she said, you know, I feel something too, but just come back when you've had your baby and you're done breastfeeding and all of that's over. So I wasn't too worried about it. So as a young woman, I'm supposed to detect my breast cancer on my own, which I'm not going to be able to do till probably stage 2 or 3. Then I'm supposed to realize that it's breast cancer. Then I'm supposed to go to my medical professional. I'm supposed to fight with them to get more, like I'm supposed to fight against them saying, well, it's probably nothing. And I'm obviously, when I hear that, I'm going to feel relieved. So I'm probably just going to go on my merry way and not worry about it. But I'm supposed to fight them and try to get a mammogram and then go for a mammogram, you know, and realize it's breast cancer. So that's a lot to like put on young women. Obviously what the task force is saying needs to be changed, and we need to value the lives of these young women dying more. Like, I've basically been sacrificed so that somebody who's a healthy female doesn't have to feel some transient anxiety and we can keep healthcare costs down. And that's just so ridiculous to me that my life apparently is worth so little that to keep, you know, a couple dollars off people's taxes so that we could scan more women and keep transient anxiety away, I've been sacrificed for that. You know, who knows if my cancer would have been curable if it had been found earlier, but there's a chance that it would have, and that I've died or I'm dying to lower the costs. And it's just so ridiculous. And on this task force that is set up or has been set up, there's actually not one breast specialist. There's not one women's health specialist. There's not one radiologist. But on the COVID team, on the team of people looking into COVID, there had to be, you know, virology experts. But for women's health, we don't need an expert on that team. We have a chiropractor. We have a chiropractor determining whether you're going to get, you know, mammograms or not. We have a psychologist determining whether you should get scans or not. Obviously, that psychologist is going to have seen women having anxiety. So maybe that psychologist is going to think that that's more of a problem than a young woman like myself having their life end because of this disease. So, I mean, something needs to be changed. People need to be aware that this is happening because obviously it's ridiculous. I'm going to lose my life to cancer that maybe if it had been caught early, I would survive. But I'm not going to. And we have a team out there who's saying that's okay. It's okay for us to sacrifice, you know, some of these outliers every year. Some of these women who are mothers and daughters and sisters and hard workers with jobs and futures. It's okay to sacrifice some of them every year because, you know, transient anxiety over like false positives on mammograms is so bad. It's so much worse than stage 4 cancer fucking ruining your bones.